My name is Emma Hartwell, and according to my mother-in-law, I was the worst thing that ever happened to her son. Not because I cheated, not because I lied, not because I treated him badly. According to Patricia, my greatest failure was that I couldn't give Daniel a child. For years, she never said those exact words out loud. She didn't have to. Some people are experts at making you feel unwanted without ever directly saying it. Before I tell you what happened, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Sad Drama Stories for more emotional family dramas and shocking family betrayals. When Daniel and I got married, I honestly thought Patricia liked me, maybe not loved me, but liked me enough. She smiled in our wedding photos, she hugged me at family dinners. She even told people she was happy her son had found someone kind. Looking back, I think she liked me because she assumed I'd immediately give her what she wanted most: grandchildren. The questions started less than 6 months after our wedding. "So, when are you two starting a family?" At first, I laughed, then I smiled, then I learned how to change the subject. Because the truth wasn't something I wanted to discuss with strangers, or relatives, or anyone. Daniel and I had been trying for almost 3 years, 3 years of appointments, 3 years of tests. 3 years of hope followed by disappointment. Every month felt like the same cycle. Optimism, waiting, heartbreak. At first we faced it together, at least that's what I believed. Daniel held my hand during doctor's appointments. He comforted me when I cried. He told me we would figure it out, and I believed him. Then Patricia started getting involved. The first comments seemed harmless. "Maybe you're working too hard. Maybe you're stressing yourself out. Maybe you need to relax." I tried not to take them personally. Then the comments became more direct. "Daniel always wanted a big family. You know he's wonderful with children. It would be such a shame if he never got that chance." Every sentence sounded innocent, but they all carried the same message. I was standing between her son and the life she imagined for him. The worst part was that I already blamed myself. Infertility has a way of convincing you that every failure belongs to you. Every negative test, every bad appointment, every disappointment. Even when doctors tell you otherwise, a small voice keeps whispering that you're letting everyone down. Patricia fed that voice every chance she got. One evening, Daniel and I attended his parents' anniversary dinner. Nearly 20 relatives filled the restaurant's private room. Everyone was laughing, telling stories, drinking wine. For a little while, I actually enjoyed myself. Then Patricia stood up to give a toast. At first, it was normal. She talked about marriage, family, commitment. Then she looked directly at Daniel. "My greatest accomplishment has always been my son." People smiled, she continued. "And hopefully one day he'll experience the joy of becoming a parent himself." The room applauded politely. Then Patricia added something that made my stomach drop. "If life is fair anyway." The room suddenly became quiet. Not completely silent, just uncomfortable. I felt every eye shift toward me. Nobody said anything. Nobody had to. The implication was obvious. Daniel reached for my hand under the table, but he didn't say anything either. And somehow that hurt more than Patricia's words. Because for the first time, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just fighting my mother-in-law, I was fighting for my marriage. And I wasn't sure my husband even knew there was a battle happening. What I didn't know then was that only a few months later, a doctor's appointment would change everything. Because the results we received that day didn't just reveal the truth about our fertility problems. They revealed who in my marriage was actually willing to stand beside me when things got difficult. 6 months later, Patricia's annual summer barbecue looked perfect from the outside. Children ran through the backyard. Music played softly from hidden speakers. Relatives laughed around picnic tables while burgers cooked on the grill. If a stranger had walked through the gate, they would have thought they were looking at a happy family. I knew better. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Sad Drama Stories for more emotional family dramas and shocking family betrayals. Since the miscarriage, things had changed between Daniel and me, not dramatically, not in a way anyone else could see. We still lived together, we still shared meals, we still slept in the same bed, but something was missing. The closeness we once had felt distant. Every conversation seemed careful. Every disagreement ended with silence, and Patricia somehow managed to be at the center of all of it. I spent most of the afternoon helping Daniel's cousins in the kitchen. It gave me something to do, something to focus on. Around 4 o'clock, I realized I'd left my phone inside the house. I slipped through the back door and headed toward the hallway. That's when I heard voices. Patricia's voice and Daniel's, they were in the dining room. At first, I wasn't trying to listen. Then I heard my name, and I stopped. "You can't keep doing this, Daniel." Patricia sounded frustrated. No, not frustrated, determined. There was a long pause, then Daniel spoke. "I know." My stomach tightened immediately. Patricia continued. "She's not getting any younger." Another pause. "Mom, you know I'm right." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The conversation continued only a few feet away. "You've spent years trying." Patricia's voice softened. The way manipulative people soften their voice when they're about to say something cruel. "You deserve the chance to be a father." The silence that followed felt endless. Then Daniel asked a question that broke my heart. "What if it never happens?" My knees almost gave out beneath me, because for the first time I heard doubt in his voice. Real doubt. The kind that doesn't disappear. Patricia immediately seized it. "Then you're wasting your life." I closed my eyes, hoping, praying, begging him to disagree, to defend me, to defend us. Instead, there was only silence. Then Patricia delivered the sentence that changed everything. "Daniel, you need to divorce Emma before it's too late." The words hit like a physical blow. I actually grabbed the wall to steady myself. Inside the dining room, nobody spoke for several seconds. Finally, Daniel said, "I don't want to talk about this." Not no, not never, not "I love my wife," just, "I don't want to talk about this." Tears filled my eyes instantly, because that wasn't a rejection, it was an escape. And Patricia knew it. "You know I'm right." "No." Daniel's answer came quickly, too quickly, almost defensive. "I love her." For one brief second, relief washed over me. Then Patricia asked a question. A simple question. The kind that destroys people. "Do you love her enough to give up being a father?" Silence. Absolute silence. I waited 1 second, 2, 3, 5, 10, nothing, no answer. And in that moment, I learned something devastating. Sometimes silence is an answer. I quietly backed away before they could see me. My phone no longer mattered. Nothing mattered. I walked through the kitchen, out the back door, and back into the party. Nobody noticed anything. People laughed. Children played. Someone handed me a drink. I smiled. I nodded. I pretended everything was normal. Years of practice had made me good at pretending. The drive home that night was one of the longest drives of my life. Daniel talked about traffic, about work, about random things he'd seen during the week. I barely heard him, because one question kept repeating in my head: if Patricia had been having this conversation today, how many times had she had it before? Then, 3 days later, while Daniel was at work, I accidentally opened the wrong drawer in his home office. And what I found inside made Patricia's words seem harmless by comparison. 3 days later, while Daniel was at work, I accidentally opened the wrong drawer in his home office. Looking back, I should probably call it fate. I wasn't searching for secrets. I wasn't snooping through his things. I was looking for a warranty document for our washing machine. Daniel kept every important paper organized in his office, and he had told me more than once that if I ever needed something, I could check the filing cabinet. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Sad Drama Stories for more emotional family dramas and shocking family betrayals. The document wasn't in the top drawer, or the second. When I pulled open the bottom drawer, I immediately realized something was different. Instead of folders and paperwork, there was a large white envelope. No label, no name. Just an envelope. Normally, I would have closed the drawer and moved on, but something about it felt strange. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was everything I'd overheard at Patricia's barbecue. Whatever the reason, I picked it up and opened it. The first thing that fell out was a photograph. A woman, early 30s, pretty, blonde, smiling. I frowned. Then another photograph slipped out, and another, and another. My pulse immediately started racing. There were at least 15 of them, 15 different women, each photograph attached to a printed profile. Age, occupation, education, marital status, children, whether they wanted more children. I felt cold all over. Because I already knew exactly what I was looking at. This wasn't random. This wasn't work-related. These women had one thing in common. Every single profile mentioned family, Children, motherhood. I sat down slowly, unable to process what I was seeing. Then I noticed handwritten notes, Patricia's handwriting. I recognized it instantly. One profile had a note beside it. Wonderful family values. Another said, already has 2 children. Another, Daniel would get along with her. My stomach dropped because suddenly Patricia's conversation at the barbecue made perfect sense. She wasn't simply suggesting divorce. She was preparing for it, planning for it, organizing it. Like I was a position that needed replacing. Then I found something even worse. A reservation confirmation, dinner for 2, Friday night, at an expensive restaurant downtown. Attached to it was a handwritten note, just 4 words. Please give her a chance. Patricia's handwriting again. For several seconds I simply stared, trying to convince myself there had to be another explanation. A business meeting, a misunderstanding, anything, but deep down I already knew. The envelope wasn't in Patricia's house. It was in Daniel's office, which meant he knew about it. Maybe he didn't create it, maybe he didn't encourage it, but he knew, and he'd never told me. The rest of that day passed in a blur. I barely remember making dinner. Barely remember watching television. Barely remember Daniel coming home. I only remember one thing, waiting. Waiting for him to mention Friday. Waiting for him to tell me about the reservation. Waiting for him to give me a reason to believe none of this meant what it looked like. Instead, around 8 o'clock that evening, he casually said something that made my heart stop. I'll be working late Friday. Working late. The lie came so easily, so naturally, like he'd rehearsed it. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in our marriage, I wondered if I truly knew the man sitting across from me. Then I smiled, not because I was happy. Because I finally made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him, not yet. I wasn't going to argue or accuse or cry. Instead, Friday night I was going to follow my husband and discover exactly who Patricia had arranged for him to meet. What I didn't know then was that the woman waiting at that restaurant wasn't the biggest surprise of the evening. The biggest surprise was who else would be sitting at that table. Friday arrived much faster than I expected. For 2 days, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photographs, those profiles, Patricia's handwritten notes, the reservation, the lies. Part of me still hoped there was some innocent explanation. Part of me wanted to believe I was overreacting. But another part, the part that had spent years being humiliated by Patricia, already knew the truth. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Sad Drama Stories for more emotional family dramas and shocking family betrayals. Daniel left the house around 6 o'clock. He kissed my forehead before leaving, told me he loved me, told me not to wait up because he'd be working late. The entire time he spoke, I watched his eyes, looking for guilt, looking for hesitation, looking for anything that might tell me he was struggling with what he was doing. I found nothing. 10 minutes later, I grabbed my keys and followed him. The restaurant was exactly as expensive as I expected. Valet parking, white tablecloths, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The kind of place people used for anniversaries and marriage proposals, not business meetings. I arrived early enough to find a table near the back where I could see the entrance. Then I waited. At 6:43, Daniel walked in. Alone, my stomach immediately tightened. A hostess greeted him, then led him toward a corner table. The exact table listed on the reservation confirmation. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Daniel checked his phone, looked around, ordered water, then someone approached the table. A woman, early 30s, dark hair, elegant dress. Beautiful. I felt physically sick. She smiled politely and sat down across from him. Daniel stood to greet her, then shook her hand. The gesture confused me. This wasn't how people greeted someone they already knew. For the next 20 minutes, I watched them talk. Nothing romantic happened. No flirting, no touching, no obvious chemistry. If anything, Daniel looked uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. Then the second surprise arrived, Patricia. My mother-in-law walked directly into the restaurant and headed toward their table. I nearly dropped my glass, because suddenly everything made sense. This wasn't a secret date, it was an interview. Patricia sat beside the woman and immediately took control of the conversation. Even from across the room, I could tell Daniel wasn't happy. His posture changed. His jaw tightened. Twice he glanced toward the exit. Then Patricia handed the woman something. A photograph. The woman studied it, smiled and nodded. I couldn't see the picture itself, but I knew exactly what it probably was. A family photo, pictures of Daniel. Pictures of the future Patricia wanted. A future without me. My hands were shaking now, not from sadness, from anger, pure anger. Because after everything we'd been through together, after every doctor's appointment, every treatment, every heartbreak, Patricia was sitting in a restaurant conducting replacement interviews like I was already gone. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel stood up. Abruptly, the woman looked surprised. Patricia looked annoyed. A heated conversation followed. I couldn't hear the words, only see the reactions. Patricia talking, Daniel shaking his head. Patricia talking more aggressively. Daniel becoming visibly angry. Then, for the first time all evening, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. My husband standing up to his mother. The argument lasted less than a minute. Then Daniel walked away, leaving both women sitting at the table. I watched him leave the restaurant. I watched Patricia's face harden. And I watched the other woman look deeply uncomfortable. For one brief moment, I felt relief. Maybe I had been wrong about Daniel. Maybe he had finally chosen me. Maybe then my phone vibrated. A text message. From an unknown number, I opened it and immediately felt every ounce of blood drain from my face. The message contained a single photograph. A photograph of Daniel standing beside another woman holding a newborn baby. And beneath the photo were 6 words. There's something you deserve to know. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. I stared at the image, then stared at it again and again. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Sad Drama Stories for more emotional family dramas and shocking family betrayals. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. Nothing about the picture made sense. The woman wasn't the one from the restaurant. I'd never seen her before. The baby looked only a few days old. Daniel appeared younger in the photo. Not much younger, but younger enough that it clearly wasn't recent. I looked back toward Patricia's table. She was still sitting there, still talking, still trying to control everyone's future except her own. Then another message arrived. This one from the same unknown number. Check your email. That was it. No explanation, no names, nothing. I opened my inbox. A new message had arrived less than 5 minutes earlier. No subject line, just 3 attachments. The first attachment was the photograph. The second was a hospital document. The third was a DNA test. My stomach dropped. I opened the hospital document first. The mother's name matched the woman in the photograph. The baby's name was listed underneath. Then I opened the DNA report. At first, I thought I was misunderstanding it. Then I read it again and again, because according to the document, Daniel was not the child's father. I blinked, completely confused. The relief hit first, fast, overwhelming. Then confusion replaced it. Why would someone send me this? Why tonight? And who was the woman? The answer arrived in the next email. A single sentence. Patricia never wanted you to know about her. My pulse quickened. I opened the attached letter, and suddenly everything changed. The woman in the photograph wasn't Daniel's girlfriend. She wasn't an ex-wife. She wasn't a secret affair. She was Daniel's former fiancée, a woman named Rachel. The woman Patricia had desperately wanted him to marry before he met me. The letter explained everything. Years earlier, Daniel and Rachel had been engaged. Patricia adored her, talked constantly about future grandchildren, future holidays, future family traditions. Then Rachel became pregnant. Patricia was thrilled until the baby was born, because shortly after the birth, a paternity test revealed Rachel's child wasn't Daniel's. The relationship ended immediately. The engagement collapsed. And according to the letter, Patricia never forgave Rachel, but she never fully let go of the fantasy either. My head was spinning. Then I reached the final paragraph and finally understood why someone had sent this to me. Because Rachel had recently learned something. Something Patricia had hidden for years. Something involving Daniel. Something involving fertility. Something Patricia never wanted anyone to discover. The email ended with a name, Rachel's, and a phone number. I stared at it for nearly 10 minutes. Then I made a decision. I called. The phone rang twice. Then a woman answered. Emma. I froze. You know who I am. Rachel laughed softly. More than you realize? We talked for almost an hour. By the end of that conversation, my entire understanding of my marriage had changed. Because Rachel told me something no doctor had ever mentioned. Something Daniel had known for years, something Patricia had known for years, something they both allowed me to blame myself for. When the fertility specialists tested Daniel years earlier, his results weren't normal, not even close. The room seemed to tilt around me. I gripped the table, trying to stay focused. Rachel's voice remained calm. "He never told you?" I couldn't answer, because suddenly every family dinner, every insult, every cruel comment, every accusation, every moment of shame looked completely different. Patricia had spent years treating me like I was the problem. Meanwhile, her own son had been hiding a truth that changed everything, and according to Rachel, the reason Daniel never told me had nothing to do with embarrassment. It had everything to do with his mother. What I didn't know then was that the next morning I was finally going to confront Daniel. And the truth he confessed would destroy our marriage long before any divorce papers ever could. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table waiting for Daniel to wake up. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Rachel's voice repeating the same sentence. His results weren't normal. For years, I had carried the blame alone. Every negative pregnancy test, every failed treatment, every family gathering where Patricia looked at me like I had stolen something from her son. I carried it all because I genuinely believed I was the problem. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Sad Drama Stories for more emotional family dramas and shocking family betrayals. At 8 o'clock, Daniel walked into the kitchen. He immediately noticed something was wrong. "Emma," I didn't answer. Instead, I slid the DNA report Rachel had sent me across the table, then the hospital records, then the fertility report. The color drained from his face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question, "How long have you known?" The silence lasted several seconds, too many seconds. Finally, Daniel sat down and whispered, 5 years, 5 years, 5 years. I repeated the number in my head because I couldn't process it. 5 years, not 5 days, not 5 weeks, 5 years. The room suddenly felt very small. "You knew," my voice barely worked. Daniel nodded. I stared at him, unable to recognize the man sitting across from me, the man I married, the man who held my hand at doctor's appointments, the man who watched me cry myself to sleep, the man who allowed me to believe I was failing him. Why? His eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't interested in tears anymore. I wanted answers. Why? He rubbed both hands over his face, then finally said the words that destroyed everything. "Mom begged me not to tell you." I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. The entire marriage, the years of guilt, the humiliation, the comments, the shame, all because his mother told him to stay quiet. "She said it would destroy me." His voice cracked. "She said if people knew." I stood up immediately because I couldn't sit there anymore, couldn't look at him, couldn't breathe the same air. "So you let me take the blame?" Daniel started crying, real crying, the kind that normally would have broken my heart. This time it didn't. "Emma." "No," my voice shook. "No." For years I'd defended him, excused him, protected him, but suddenly everything became clear. Patricia wasn't the only problem. Daniel wasn't a victim, he was a participant. Every time he stayed silent, every time he let her insult me, every time he watched me blame myself, he made a choice, and now we were living with the result. 3 weeks later, I moved out. The divorce wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming, no cheating scandal, no courtroom war. Just exhaustion, the kind that comes from carrying a marriage by yourself for too long. Daniel tried for a while, flowers, letters, apologies, promises, but some truths arrived too late. The divorce became final 11 months later. I was 36 years old, single, heartbroken, and completely lost. Then something unexpected happened. I rebuilt my life, not quickly, not easily, but steadily. I returned to school, started working with children, eventually opened a pediatric rehabilitation center for children recovering from serious illnesses and injuries. The work gave me purpose, meaning, peace. Years passed, slowly, then quickly. In one morning, nearly 5 years after my divorce, my receptionist called my office. Her voice sounded strange. "Emma, yes, there's someone here asking for you." I barely looked up from my paperwork. "Who?" A long pause followed. Then she answered, and suddenly my entire world stopped, because the person standing in my lobby was Patricia, and she wasn't there to argue, she wasn't there to criticize, she wasn't there to blame me. She was there because she needed something. Something only I could give her. 5 years later, the last person I expected to see standing in my rehabilitation center was Patricia Lawson. For a moment, I honestly thought I was imagining her. The woman who had spent years criticizing me, blaming me, and convincing her son that I wasn't enough was sitting quietly in my waiting room looking smaller than I remembered. Older, too. Life had clearly not been kind to her. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Sad Drama Stories for more emotional family dramas and shocking family betrayals. I walked into the lobby and stopped several feet away. Patricia stood immediately. The confidence she used to carry was gone, the sharp expressions, the judgment, the superiority, all of it seemed to have disappeared. "Emma," I nodded. Patricia, neither of us moved, neither of us smiled. Finally, she held out a folder. "My granddaughter needs help." The words caught me completely off guard. "Your granddaughter?" Patricia looked down, then nodded. Daniel had eventually remarried. The marriage hadn't lasted. But there was a child. A little girl named Lily, 7 years old. And according to the medical records inside the folder, Lily had recently been diagnosed with a serious neurological condition that required long-term rehabilitation. My rehabilitation center, the very place Patricia had walked into, I slowly reviewed the records, then looked back up. "Why come here?" Her eyes filled with tears, because she knew the answer. This was the best pediatric rehabilitation center in the region. The center I built. The center nobody believed I could build. The center founded by the woman she once called broken. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Patricia surprised me. "I owe you an apology." The words sounded painful, like they had been trapped inside her for years. I remained silent, so she continued. "I blamed you for everything." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I blamed you because it was easier than facing the truth." The truth. For years, nobody wanted the truth. Then she said something I never expected to hear. "I knew about Daniel's fertility results." I closed my eyes. Not because I was surprised, because hearing it out loud somehow hurt more. Patricia wiped her face. "I convinced myself I was protecting him." The old excuse. The same excuse people always use when they're hurting someone: protection. Love, concern, the labels change, the damage stays the same. Then she whispered, "But I was protecting myself." That answer finally sounded honest, because Patricia never wanted a reality where her son wasn't perfect. So she found someone else to carry the blame. Me. The room remained quiet. Then she handed me another photograph, a little girl smiling at the camera, brown eyes, messy hair, missing front tooth. "Lily," I stared at the picture. And suddenly all my anger disappeared, not because Patricia deserved forgiveness, because Lily deserved help. The child wasn't responsible for any of this. A few weeks later, Lily became one of our patients. And over time, something unexpected happened. I grew to adore her. She was funny, smart, stubborn, brave. She reminded me that children don't care about old grudges, they don't care about family politics. They don't care who won arguments years ago, they just want kindness. One afternoon, while Lily was drawing pictures in my office, she looked up and asked a question. A simple question. The kind children ask without realizing how powerful it is. "Why don't you have kids?" I smiled, then looked around the center, at the therapy rooms, at the families, at the photographs covering the walls. Hundreds of children. Hundreds of success stories, hundreds of lives, and for the first time in my life I knew the answer. "I do." Lily frowned. "What?" I laughed softly, then pointed around the building. "Just in a different way?" Years earlier, Patricia convinced me that motherhood was the only thing that could make a woman complete. She was wrong, completely wrong, because motherhood isn't measured by biology, it's measured by love, by sacrifice, by showing up when someone needs you. And somehow, while I was grieving the life I thought I wanted, I built a life that mattered more than I ever imagined. Patricia apologized again before she left. This time I believed her. Not because she deserved forgiveness, because carrying anger forever would have only hurt me. As for Daniel, I eventually forgave him too, from a distance. Not because he earned it, because I deserved peace. And that's how this story ends. A mother-in-law who spent years trying to replace me, a marriage that couldn't survive silence, a truth hidden for 5 years, and a little girl who reminded me that family isn't always the people who choose you first. Sometimes it's the people who need you most. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe to Sad Drama Stories for more emotional family dramas, shocking betrayals, hidden family secrets, and unforgettable endings. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next story.